One.
All right. So once again, before we get started, go to the chat box and tell us what makes you nervous and how does the anxiety manifest itself. So some people, when they get nervous, their heart pounds. In my case, that's what happens with me. Is my heart just starts thumping. I feel this almost like my heart just sort of jumping out of my chest. But other people's, there's the classic sweaty palms. Wally said, sweaty palms. Yeah, absolutely. All of these things are okay. Jitalia. I'm sure I'm pronouncing your name wrong. But Jitalia, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, says your heart races, which is, and there's a classic. A lot of people sort of get flush. Face turns red. Yeah, a lot of different things. So we're going to talk today about the classic thing that everybody is nervous about. I mean, there's all sorts of studies talking about how public speaking is everyone's greatest fear. You can go on the internet and look this up. There's all sorts of studies about this. It's always public speaking and spiders are the two. They're right next to each other. Public speaking and spiders are everybody's biggest fears. So we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be counting down, actually. We're going to be counting down the top 4 ways to deal with your fear of public speaking. And then we're going to have a 5th that's actually a terrible way to deal with public speaking, but it's often thought about. We're going to save that one for last. As always.
Joey, real quick, what was the joke that Seinfeld made about this? Didn't he have one about...
Yeah, the Jerry Seinfeld joke. Jerry Seinfeld, I hope I'm going to get it right here. Jerry Seinfeld, let's see, the joke was public speaking is everyone's greatest fear. He finds that amazing because that means that at a funeral, you'd rather be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. And so there you go. My apologies to Mr. Seinfeld. But it's a pretty good joke. It's a pretty good joke. So let's talk about these. Once again, feel free, jump in, ask questions. If you want to ask a question in the chat function, feel free. We'd love you to put yourself on camera because we love to see you. So let's start with the first way to dealing with your fear of public speaking. This is a really good one that I've really only started using once I actually started doing this, speaking with people, teaching, which is introduce yourself to everyone in the room as they come into the room. Okay, so this is what you do. Let's say you're speaking to 25 people. Position yourself at the front of the room, and at the door, and introduce yourself. Hello, I'm Joey Asher. I'm going to be your speaker today. I'm looking forward to speaking. And then you have a brief little sort of superficial type conversation with them where you just get to know them. And I got to tell you, this is one of those things that I think really helps, especially in the circumstance where you're speaking to a bunch of strangers, because it helps turn the strangers into people that aren't strangers anymore. I actually think about one circumstance in particular. This was early on when I started. I've been doing this now for 20 years, and one of the early programs that I did, it was some sort of I forgot what the group was. But it was a pretty large group, probably 50 people. Oh, I know what it was. It was a Rotary Club. It was a Rotary Club meeting, and they had asked me to come and speak about public speaking. I forgot which Rotary. I think it was like the Buckhead Rotary. And there were a lot of people there. And I introduced myself, and like the 7th person who came in was somebody that I kind of knew. And when I got up there at the beginning, I was very nervous, but I looked at that one person in the eye, and I started looking right at him. And I felt more comfortable, and it sort of got me going well. And I don't really get as nervous anymore, but I do still get nervous. Wally, you have your hand up. Does that mean you have a question? By the way, Wally High's a good friend of mine from Salt Lake, I believe. Am I right, Wally?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, Joe, I just wanted to add, so it wasn't a question, it's a comment, that I believe that tactic also makes the audience feel included, right? So as a participant, when someone does what you just described, it makes a huge difference. It gives me a connection, and it helps me feel like I'm part of the program, not just somebody sitting down observing. That's all I want to share.
Yeah, it's a really good point. We're JD and we're often hired by our clients to come in and help speak to big conferences and things like that. Help prepare people to speak to big conferences. And one of the things you see a lot of people do in these conferences is you see them standing up there while everybody's filing into the room, and they're just filing up there, sitting up on the stage with their hands crossed, waiting for people to file in. When what they should be doing is out in the room, working the room, saying hello, getting to know everybody, because it's going to really warm up the room. It's going to make everything a lot better. So that is our first public speaking.
Joey, before we jump into the next one, though, I mean, guys, this applies virtual too. How many of you are still giving virtual presentations? I know, I figured everybody. But it's the same kind of thing. Log on early, chit chat with the people. Where are you calling it? Because you've got people spread out. Where are you calling in from? Hey, like great looking dog. Okay, we're starting to learn what everybody's pets look like nowadays. But it's the same thing. Log on early. Don't wait. Jump in. Chit chat with people, even if they're not on camera. Just chit chat with them a little bit, and you'll realize people will warm up a little bit, and you'll get more comfortable as you do this.
So that's our first. Idea for how to deal with nerves is introduce yourself to people in the audience as they're coming in. So what's the second one, JD?
I think the second one is we're talking about is just in general kind of how do we deal with an adrenaline or the anxiety that happens? How many people here by show of hands or one in the chat box get a little bit of anxiety or nerves? And I'm going to raise my hand on this one. Okay. Now, some people said it's when you get called on, or maybe you're just giving a big presentation, whatever it may be. Some people, does anybody just get nervous because they're actually on the camera, even just in a meeting? You should be getting over that now by now, because it hasn't changed in a while. But what's happening is they think about this. Did anybody play sports or maybe have recitals growing up? Did anybody get a little bit nervous before the game or your recital or something of that nature, right? So Brian Heatwole, you raised your hand. What sport did you play growing up?
I played all sports till high school, and I played basketball in college.
All right. Did you get a little nervous before games?
Before every game.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of a natural thing here. It's like, I call it positive anxiety, but that's like the fight or flight response. We get a little bit of adrenaline in your body. And there's ways that you can take care of that. I mean, Brian, let me ask you, like, you played college ball. What did you do to take care of the adrenaline?
Well, I think a couple things come to mind. You always have a routine that you go through before the game, right? When you're shooting a free throw, you have a routine, right? Because it focuses you on something else rather than the anxiety itself. So, and I did some play-by-play on the radio too for football games and stuff like that. So I learned from people that were studying communications to have something in your hand. Often you'll see someone with a pen or something like that they're touching or rubbing or something. It's not a distraction up here. It's something that you have below where and I have a tendency to pace when I present too. So I'm a lot better in a boardroom style presentation where I'm pacing and walking up and making eye contact with various people that are nodding their head, acknowledging that I've connected with them.
So this is a really good thing, because this is kind of what we're getting at. Is you got to do something with the adrenaline, okay? Whether or not if you're rubbing a pen under the table, don't suggest you do that. Like if you're, obviously he said don't distract people, but you've got to do something with the adrenaline. Before I give presentations, I love to meet people first, but I also get a little bit nervous, like right before they're called. When they're reading my bio is when I start freaking out. That's when I start going, oh God, because they set the bar here and you're like, oh, if I suck, it's just going to be so bad. So I just go for a nice little walk. I'll go out in the hallway because I'm getting a little bit anxious. I kind of just flush the adrenaline out. I think it was Billy Crystal, I believe. Joey, correct me if it was the wrong comedian here, but I believe it was Billy Crystal that would actually do push-ups before going on stage, just to kind of release the energy in this, because otherwise you got to do something with it. Because if you're going to give a presentation in the business world, you can't use the ninja smoke technique, okay? You can't blow the ninja smoke, and when the smoke clears, you're gone. You still have to present. So, you got to walk around a little bit. Get up and shake, like we got Jan McKenzie, cracks me up, she's one of our coaches. She'll just kind of do this before she gets up there and shake her arms out. get a little bit of the adrenaline out of the body, do some push-ups. I mean, obviously you don't want to do push-ups in front of everybody at work, but find something that distracts you and allows you to get the adrenaline, adrenaline out of your body, so that when you get to that point, you can actually just be nice and calm and relaxed. I like what you talked about is also too, one of the things that I think about is I'm an 8U softball pitcher, and it's not quite presenting, but when you can't pitch to 8-year-olds, the parents get angry. Okay. They are mean spirited humans when you can't throw strikes. Okay. So before games, I will walk around the softball park because I know that if I mess up, it's going to be nerve wracking. So get the adrenaline out, exercise a little bit, move around, do something to release that energy. Any questions on the first 2 things we've talked about, or just jump in with a couple of the things here? Any questions? I do have a good comment though. Can we unmute Rachel? Rachel Beal, where are you? Rachel, are you still here?
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Rachel. So you said that you worried about forgetting to mention a key point. Does anybody ever else have that same issue where you're worried that you're gonna do that? So Rachel, what can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think I just get so focused on trying to remember what I want to say, and my brain's going much faster than I want to speak to everybody. And so I'm just so focused on what I'm thinking about versus what I'm saying. I just keep speaking and speaking. And then all of a sudden my throat gets tight and I realize, oh, I forgot to breathe. I've been speaking for too long. And then I have to take like an awkward pause to just like breathe deeply. And everybody can kind of tell that, that's me playing catch up in my head. And it looks very awkward.
That's a lot going on in a presentation. So Joey, that might lead us into the third thing we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, so it does lead into the third thing. By the way, it's a real common challenge is people are worried about missing something. So we're going to talk about that. And there's actually 2 things, and I'm going to talk about one, and JD's going to talk about another. But the first thing to remember, and this is a really important one, is to remember that public speaking isn't about you. It's about helping your audience. And so to always make sure that you're audience centered, I think is a really important piece of this. There's a story that my mother actually used to talk. So this company Speechworks was started in 1986. So what is that, 35 years ago, by my mother and her partner. And she was going on television to promote something about one of her books. And she was waiting in the CNN sort of green room, waiting for the opportunity to go out. And she was really, really nervous. And the news anchor comes in to see her right before she's about to go out and says, how you feeling? And my mother, Spring Asher's her name, says, I'm really nervous. I'm a nervous wreck. And the news anchor looks at her and she goes, well, I need you to get over that wreck because I don't want you to ruin my show. And it was kind of harsh. It was kind of tough love, but it's a really good point, which is to remember that public speaking is not about you. It's about helping the people. And so this is something that I've actually always found to be very helpful to me personally, is that when I'm really nervous, I always say to myself, all right, I'm nervous. I've prepared, I've rehearsed, I've done all the things that I think I need to do. And now I'm just going to make sure that I'm there for the people in front of me. I'm there for the people to help them, because that to me is what this is all about. It's about helping other people. It's not about, seeming fabulous and making people think, oh, what a wonderful speaker Joey is, or anything like that. It's just about helping the people you're with. And so it's to have that audience-centered focus. I think takes a little bit of stress off. So that's the first, that's the next thing, is to make sure that you're just audience-centered. All right, so we go now to the second one. We have this listed as our number 2 tip, which is actually the most important tip as to how to deal with your anxiety. And JD, which one is that?
Yeah, so the next the number 1, or the number 2, but really the number 1 is you got to rehearse. But I do want to kind of tail this into what Joey was talking about here, is that I think one thing that you should realize, and Rachel, let me ask you this question. Do you actually script out what you're going to say? How many people script their stuff out? Put one in the chat box. We actually script it. Like, you literally write stuff, right? People script this out. And then what happens when you forget that word? Who do you start focusing on more? The audience or the word? You ever seen people do that? They're like, and because they're trying to remember their script. Here's a really fascinating thing. This goes to the rehearsal piece, is your audience has no idea what's supposed to come out of your mouth. They have no clue what you've prepared, okay? So as you go to rehearse, you've got to rehearse. You not just script it out. And a lot of people try to memorize their scripts, or they try to remember everything they're going to say. What I would do is, I love this, what David just wrote, bullet points, okay? I really think the best way to do this is to get your key points down on paper and then rehearse out loud from beginning to end without stopping. So let me just ask here, why do you think, let me ask Bridgette Washington here. Bridgette's wearing a spicy shirt for a Friday. I like it. Bridgette, why should you rehearse out loud?
I would say I rehearse out loud to, practice my script. I mean, to hear myself and my thoughts and be comfortable with them.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. You start to feel comfortable with what you're going to say, right? But how many people have ever done something and the first time it came out of their mouth wasn't quite the best? Anybody done that before? Unfortunately, this is how people approach presentations. It's like, this is what usually happens. You spend a lot of time on that crappy PowerPoint that no one cares about. And then you read the PowerPoint and you're like, okay. And then you look at it and you go like this. Okay. In your head, you're going, this is what I'm going to say here. And this is what I'm going to say here. And then you never actually say it. And so the first time it comes out of your mouth, which is probably not the best time, is in front of the audience. So if you know that's the first time, you should be nervous. But if you actually rehearse out loud, and I do this a lot, my 8-year-old hates it, but I actually rehearse a lot, even though I've given it. And the more you say it, it's like the more relaxed you become. And then you start to realize that every time you say it, it comes out a little differently. And it's okay as long as you cover what? Your key points. It doesn't matter if it comes out of your mouth the exact same way. And the more you rehearse out loud, the more comfortable it becomes. And you start to go, wait a minute, it doesn't have to sound like I wrote it. Okay? Because by the way, if you write a script, Joe, I always laugh. Joey had this saying, I don't know if we say it anymore, but I love it. He goes, you need to speak like a human. Okay? Because everybody writes it down on a script and then they never rehearse it out loud and they sound like a robot. Say it out loud, say it over and over again. You will be more comfortable. I promise you, before you show up, you're going like, I've done it 5 times in the car. I'm ready to go. And it doesn't matter if it's perfect because it's come out different every time, but I'm feeling good about it. You got to rehearse out loud and you got to do it from beginning to end. Why would you do it from beginning to end without stopping? I think this is a big one too. Why is that?
There's some pretty good comments here in the chat box. Rachel.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I missed that. Apologize.
Rachel's talk. Rachel Beal, would you unmute and just share us with your comment, because I think it's a really good one. Rachel,
Yeah, said that practicing out loud is kind of like establishing muscle memory for the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you say it out loud, you just practice saying it. You start to establish that muscle memory.
Yeah, I mean, I think about golf. Like if you any golfers out there, they might have a couple golfers, but I mean, it's like, or if you play any sport or whatever you do. I mean, think about if a pro golfer, if every day when he went out to the driving range and just stood there with the golf club and the ball and thought about how they were going to swing the club. If they just sat there and thought about it, they'd never be a good golfer. They swing. That's what a rehearsal's like. It's like practice swings. You just got to get some practice swings in before you actually get up to bat, and you'll be more comfortable swinging the bat because you're going to know you've already done this before. I think that's a really good one. But one thing that we run into is when people don't practice from beginning to end, is this actually happened on a rehearsal with a team. We had a 5-minute, I let it go just because I thought it was funny, but We had a 5-minute discussion over whether or not someone should use the word amazing versus fantastic. So we started focusing more on the content and being perfect speakers. And we literally stopped the presentation rehearsal. So you never get the sense of the flow. So if you go from beginning to end, you can feel the flow. You can get this. How many people here feel like sometimes transitions are hard? Right? And then you always put that transition. I'm like, what's that slide for? Oh, that's a transition slide. But if you say it out loud from beginning to end without stopping, you also get the sense of the flow of the transitions. So if you're going from one thing to another or one person to another, you've already done this. And it goes back to what Rachel said, which I think is awesome. You've established muscle memory and it's second nature when you get up there. So you got to rehearse and rehearse out loud from beginning to end without stopping. So any questions before we dive into the number one tip for reducing nerves?
I want to highlight something Rob Armstrong, my old squash partner, said. Rob, why don't you unmute? Tell us about your go-to tip because it's a great one.
So I was actually talking to my daughter who was freaked out about this as she was entering, I think it was junior high school. She had to give her first presentation. And I asked her if she'd actually practiced it. She goes, well, I know what I'm going to say. And I said, well, I mean, when you're done tonight, I want you to go up to your bedroom and I want you to actually give the presentation to your mirror. She goes, what? And I said, I want you to give the presentation 3 times to your mirror because I can't tell you how many Marriott hotels I've been in across the country, getting up in the morning and giving my presentation to the mirror because it is that muscle memory. And so she actually came home from the presentation and was like, wow, that was actually a really good tip. I knew what I was going to say before I said it.
Dad knows a few things. Yeah, Dad knows a few things or two. I tell you what, and just as good as a mirror, I think a mirror is a great thing. I still practice in the mirror. Is people practicing on your cell phone as well? Now everybody is carrying around with them a great video camera.
Yeah.
And you can record yourself and see how you come across. It's just like doing it in a. I think the mirror is great. I still do that. The thing I love about the mirror is you can actually see how you look. The video camera is also a great thing to do. Record yourself is a really, really important thing. Let's see. Karen says practicing is the opposite of it. Karen, explain this one to me. I like this comment. I'm not sure if I completely get it.
Well, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Practicing is the opposite of insanity. It's doing it over and over again and expecting different results.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. That's right. That's right. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry. Really good point. Really good point. The only other thing, the practice thing, JD made the point of how you practice the first time through is always not so good. You get that one out of your system, and then you move on to the good ones. Let's move on to the one thing that you hear over and over again as a tip to help you with your public speaking and to help you overcome your nerves is, and this is the one you hear over and over again. I actually think this is a terrible suggestion, but I like to bring it up because I always think it's kind of an interesting one to discuss. Envision your audience in their underwear. Okay. I think this is a terrible idea. I saw several of you shaking your heads as if it's silly. Megan, do you have an opinion on this issue? I saw you shook your head there a little bit. I think this is a terrible idea. Why is that?
If it's me, yeah, I've heard that forever. I don't know. It might make you laugh. I mean, depending on what your sense of humor is, or scare you even more. I've tried to get away from that one and do the. Good or bad. I sometimes think like they're not really paying attention, especially the speakers after me. They're more worried about their own points, so that sometimes helps me get over my nerves.
Yeah, I think the thought process is that you imagine them in their underwear, and so therefore that makes them seem very human and all this. I just don't think that it's very effective. I think if you really want to make them seem human, you can do the first thing that we talked about, which is introduce yourself and talk to them. All of those things are just distractions away from the things that are really, really going to help you become better. And the most important one is the one that JD talked about, is just to practice. It's just to rehearse your presentation out loud from beginning to end without stopping, like it's a play. Well, we're closing in on the end here. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything at all about anything that we've brought up? We're very much interested in your points of view. John, you said you have never imagined people in their underwear for a presentation. I probably shouldn't go beyond.
Never once. I've heard it forever. Never once have I done it.
So
Yeah.
Joey, a question that we've gotten in workshops, or I've gotten in a workshop before, is that let's say that you really just have a tough time and you're struggling and you do get nervous midway through and you start losing track. What can you do to reconnect with your audience if you really feel like you've kind of lost it a little bit because you just couldn't get over it at that point?
I'm sorry, were you asking me a question?
Yep.
I'm sorry, say it again. I was reading.
So the question that's come up, the question I've gotten, and I think Rachel mentioned, has anybody ever lost their place in the middle of it and got nervous?
Oh,
Like
okay.
you forgot your thought.
Sorry. I'm sorry.
This happens a lot. I said something to my wife the other day, and she looked at me and goes, "Whatever was in your head didn't come out of your mouth." So I think that just happened a second ago. But yeah, what happens when you really just lose it a little bit? How do you kind of get back and not let the nerves continue to ruin the presentation for you?
I think the main thing is to have practiced a lot, and limit the number of things you're planning to say. A lot of people memorize their presentations word for word, and so if they get lost, they get completely lost, and they can't figure out where to pick up the thread. Whereas if you've only going to say I'm only going to make 3 key points, if you get lost, you can just go to your second point, or you can go to your third point. There's a couple of questions that are coming up right now. John says, "Is there such a thing as practicing too much?" I guess there is such a thing as practicing too much. The only time I say you practice too much is if you practice so much that you're exhausted.
Yeah.
A lot of people will practice until like 3 a.m. That's obviously counterproductive. But beyond that, I don't think there's practicing too much. I don't think you should. I think ask Nick Saban. Is there such a thing as practicing too much? I don't know. I mean, they practice a lot and they win a lot of football games. So I think that practicing a lot is a really, really good thing. The people that I know that are good at this practice a lot. Let's see.
I think this one here, Joey, from Jacqueline Booker says, "How do you limit your ums?" Well, most of us are umming because we're trying to think about what we're going to say, right? You can fix that by rehearsing. You really can. Getting comfortable with it. How many people here legitimately practice their presentations? Like legitimately. All right. So what is your form of practice? Conrad, good to see you. Conrad from Axis.
Hello.
Good to have you. Conrad, what do you do to rehearse?
I do what you've said. I practice out loud, somewhere quiet, 2 or 3 times to the extent I can.
Yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for it. We've had people that literally just read their PowerPoint slides. Doesn't count. Does not count. I don't know. I was related this way. Don't ever tell my kid this, but I have an 8-year-old Holland. She's really cute. I got 3 daughters. She's an amazing looking kid. But I will tell you, when she was born, despite popular opinion, she was not a cute baby. Okay, she just was not a cute baby. His hair sticking up, head a little, misshapen. Oh man, but that's, to me, it's like your first presentation, your first rehearsal. It's called the ugly baby. You're gonna have one, okay? The first rehearsal is not gonna be pretty. Don't get upset. But the more you work at it, you're gonna get better, and it's gonna be a good-looking kid like my 8-year-old, okay? But you gotta keep at it. You gotta keep rehearsing, knowing that the first one's just not gonna be the best. All right. And as you go and it matures and the presentation matures, it's going to be good. You're going to be more comfortable and you'll be more confident when you walk into the audience knowing that you've done this. Don't tell my daughter that, please. Or my wife.
It's 12:30. It's 12:30, and we'd like to make sure we keep people. We'd like to stick to our time. So once again, the most important thing is to practice. The other things we've talked about are introduce yourself to the people in the audience, do some exercise, make sure that you're thinking about your audience and not yourself. But by far, the most important thing you can do to overcome your nerves is to rehearse your presentations out loud. Thank you all once again. We love being with you guys. By the way, we have a new free ebook called "We're All News Anchors Now." You can go to our website and download it for free. We urge you to do that. It's called "We're All News Anchors Now." So go to our website and download it. Anyway, thank you all. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Have a great weekend, all. Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.